through everything. I've hit record. Wow, my old mate Anthony Desiato has joined me, and I couldn't be more pleased to see him again and to hear him again. We're just chatting. We don't know how long it's been since we've talked. Desi to Dano, do we?
Yeah, Dan, it's so great to see you and to talk to you again. And yeah, again, like you said, off mic, we were trying to do the math on how long it's been, and it's been. I guess the answer is too long. I
Yeah,
think we
too
can
long.
agree on that.
Yes. Well, Anthony is more recently a podcaster and a vodcaster, if that's still a term, and also a filmmaker. I hope he's going to get back to that. I'm going to keep badgering him until he does. So, if it's a battle of wills, I'm going to back myself, Desi.
Don't worry, there's no arm twisting needed. I very much have plans for what will be my 5th documentary. It's the sort of thing that, had it not been for the pandemic, I very likely would have, already started work on it, or at least pre-production. But the pandemic kind of pushed everything back. But I definitely have plans for another movie, so don't worry.
Anything you're keen to share?
No, it's still kind of marinating. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but there's an element of it that will feel very familiar, I guess, to those who have followed my previous work. But there's also the main thrust of it, and this whole other component that's different, but also personal to me. So I know that's vague, but again, I'm still fleshing all of it out. But I will share with you as soon as I can.
Sounds fantastic. Should we plug everything at the front? Because there's a lot to get through. Do you want to start with the movies, stroke documentaries?
Sure. So my latest documentary is called My Comic Shop Country, and that is available on Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, and Curiosity Stream. So a few different ways to watch that. And then my first 3 documentaries, My Comic Shop Documentary, By Spoon, the Jay Mizell story, and Wacky Man, The Rise of a Puppeteer. Those are all available for free on my YouTube channel, the Anthony Desiato YouTube channel. And you, my friend, you have music in a number of those projects, and I really publicly here on the record, I want to thank you for your contributions, which really added a lot. And not to single one out at the expense of the others, but you did a theme for Wacky Man, The Rise of a Puppeteer, that was just so perfect and just fit. I feel like it fit the subject and the movie so well. So thank you for that, and for all of the other music you've given me. It really has been a huge help.
We all miss Wally now, sadly dead, and in a landfill somewhere in upstate New York. No, I'm joking. Of course, Wally Wackerman will never die. We love Zach Walliner and Wally Wacky Man. And so moving on to podcasting. Well, I've never seen a young man take to podcasting with such fervor as you did. I should have written them all down, but let's go through them, Desi. Just like a walk down Desi Lane.
Sure. It's funny because a lot of people have commented on my level of output over the past 6 months, I guess. And I appreciate it, but it's this weird thing where I don't know how much of a compliment it is. You know what I mean? It's like, you're putting out so much. It's like, I don't know, thanks. I mean, I don't know.
You're putting out so much.
Or that. But I started podcasting, as you know, 6 years ago, just about, in 2015, when Alternate Realities, my old comic shop, the subject of my first documentary, was about to close. And I started the show called My Comic Shop History, which is still going on. And that was my entry point into the world of podcasting as a host. I had been a guest on your show and a few others, and had such a great time. And that was in part what, made me want to do my own show. So I started that, and that's really been the main focus for the past few years. And then far more recently, I have expanded my output just to sort of, pursue my own interests and have that creative outlet and have the opportunity to connect with people again over this past year when, we've all been so restricted So it's been, I mean, I've just been having the best time. I think that's why I've been doing so much, is that I'm just genuinely enjoying it. So my comic shop history is still going. My passion project, I guess, at the moment is digging for kryptonite, a Superman fan journey.
Oh
As a
boy.
lifelong Superman fan, yeah, as a lifelong Superman fan, I mean, this is something that I had kind of always wanted to do, and I guess I just always felt like, oh, there's so many Superman podcasts out there. It's like, what, I don't know. I guess what could I offer? But I've been having the best time. We're covering the character across time and media, so it's really taking a very long view of Superman, and I couldn't be having a better time doing that. I also have a book club podcast called My Comic Shop Book Club, and then the most recent thing, I started a YouTube series called Comic Shop Team Up, where it's myself and the owner of Fat Moose Comics, a shop in New Jersey. We get together once a week for 15 minutes to a half hour, and we just chat about life in and out of the comic shop. So I think each show kind of has its own flavor and hits on something a little bit different. But yeah, those are the shows.
What it doesn't hit on enough is this.
Marvel,
This.
I know. Well, listen,
Don't,
I've done
don't be
Marvel
upset.
stuff on the book club. I've
Yeah,
done
sure,
Marvel
sure,
on the
sure.
book club, and I did it for
Sure.
you.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, you love Superman, and that's fantastic. And I've learned so much more about Superman and DC stuff listening to you and watching the videos also. What do you think your message is right at the moment? What do you think your core message is? Are you just having fun, or are you still trying to draw people over to the comic book side?
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
that's an
I guess a
interesting question.
comic book guy never gives up on trying to convert people. You know, we're like Mormons. Whenever we meet with someone, it's an opportunity. And if you, I don't think you're a Mormon, so I think I'm cool saying that.
Yeah, you're fine. That's interesting. I don't know that I would put it that way, or that I've thought about it in those terms, but that is a really interesting question. I think, when it comes to digging for kryptonite or the book club podcast, those, I guess I'm sort of preaching to the choir in that sense, in that, I think a lot of the people listening to those shows or watching those shows are already comic fans. And I think maybe I'm, exposing them to an aspect of Superman or to a comic book story that, either they never checked out or they kind of wrote off, and maybe it encourages them to revisit it. But again, they're, I think, already in this world, is the sense that I get. I don't know how many people are necessarily looking at digging for kryptonite and they're like, well, I've never cared, I've never read any Superman comic or watched anything, but I'm going to try this. I don't know if that might be happening, but I really think with the documentary, My Comic Shop Country, and with My Comic Shop History, the podcast, I think that is an area where, and certainly with the documentary, where I designed something that hopefully, ideally, could be watched and enjoyed by someone not in this world, and maybe make them at least think about going to a comic shop. So certainly with the documentary, I think there's that aspect of, trying to reach people and share what's so great about this. With these other podcasts, yeah, I don't know how much that's necessarily happening, or how much that's really motivating me. But if it happens, I think that's a great byproduct.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be harder than ever for comic book shops with COVID and everything. It's got to be tough because it's a real touchy feely sort of thing with a lot of plastic that we didn't know for quite a few months that COVID doesn't really like hanging out on surfaces, did we? And so it must have been tough.
Yeah, the thing that I just kept thinking about, and as we showed in the documentary, it's like it's hard enough to run any small business. It's
Mm,
especially hard to run a comic shop on a good day,
yeah.
let alone in the midst of this. But I mentioned that shop in New Jersey, Fat Moose. In one of our upcoming episodes that we've already filmed, Sean talks about how he continues to get new people coming in, and the sense he gets is that because people have been cooped up for so long, like they're excited now to go back out and maybe to try something different and go to a new place. So, that's encouraging.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. But yeah, I mean, for this past year, yeah, I don't envy the shops.
Yeah, I went into a new shop because I was on holidays, one in Wollongong, which is a good Aussie word for you, on the coast, and it was just a little store, but they had all their premium comics up on the walls, and that was visually quite exciting. But they really didn't do figures or pops or anything like that. So even though I wouldn't be interested in them, it did seem kind of stark. It was a lot of comics in bins. So, I went in, I found something for me. I asked about something for a mate. I did that, like spent my $18, and I was out of there. But I do realize that they'd need to spend another, 20, 30, $40,000 to really get that looking great. I don't know what the future is of that. And I'm 50. I imagine what it's like, trying to get a 15-year-old into that store. Gosh, that's a tough one.
I think that is such a tough nut to crack at all
Mm.
levels. And again, it feels like there's so much opportunity, so much potential for crossover.
Yeah.
Again, given how popular the movies and the television shows are, and I know it is a source of frustration on the retail side and on the publishing side that you don't always have as much of that spillover from people going to the movies and watching the shows and then reading comics. But I mean, people they're doing it, but yeah, I don't know. As far as kind of maximizing that, I know it's a very, very tough nut to crack.
So, being that comic books wouldn't sell 1% of a of an Avengers movie per year, or maybe it would. Let's say it does. We can round up to 1%. I know going back 10 years ago, there was a lot of criticism from the comic book industry about releasing comics that were clearly just movie pictures, not pictures, pictures. What do you think about that now? You got a hard line on that? I'm going to bang the table. Have you got? What do you think about that? You'll know a movie pitch comic book when you see it, right?
Well, I know a creator who is often accused of that is Mark Miller. I know. I mean, as you were saying that, he immediately came to mind. I mean, I haven't read a lot of his recent stuff, so it's kind of hard for me to really say. I mean, again, I wish I had more specific examples that I could really pull from. I mean, I think that if you're a creator, and especially when we're talking, independent comics, right? And that's where they really, a creator really stands to gain, if their work is optioned and turned into a movie or television show. I mean, if I were an independent creator with a creator-owned work, I have to imagine I would be thinking about the potential for an adaptation. At the same time, you don't want that to come at the expense of the experience of the comic. I mean, the comic should be able to stand on its own. While even if it is sort of maybe designed to hit certain beats that would play well on screen or something like that. So I don't know that it's inherently a bad thing. I think it makes a lot of sense, but again, at the same time, not if it comes at the expense of the reading experience. I mean, if you're reading it and it's I don't know, like you see that the creator's heart isn't in it, that they really are just looking at this solely as a pitch, then I think that can be detrimental. But otherwise, I mean, again, I think it's just natural at this point.
It's just the way life is. And early half of last century, I mean, I don't think a creator came up with Green Lantern, worked hard on it, or, pretty hard, because I think you got to work hard on coming out. We know Green Lantern, but if you're going to make up a Green Lantern, you got to think about it for a bit and think about what it's going to be. I mean, I've just picked on Green Lantern for fun. And, I hope this sucks and goes poorly. That's not what they'd be thinking. What they were thinking is like, I hope this, does a couple of 100,000 a month, and so just transfer that into 2021. They would say, well, look, I hope a studio's interested in this, and I can maybe at least pay my mortgage for the next few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I haven't made up any comics yet. But, I think it'd be a good tale about a young film producer, by day. What could you do by night, Desi?
Well, I mean, the film and the
Sleep?
podcast, that is, well, I mean, I have a day job. So really the film and podcasting is what I do at night
Oh,
by
yeah.
night. So yeah.
Okay,
I
well,
don't,
look, maybe this idea doesn't have legs.
I think it's the sort of thing, it'd be a very, very specific, small audience for that. I don't know that that's the way to
Well,
go.
what about the comic book shop fixer? The comic book shop fixer. So do you think you're qualified with that? But I suppose you'd have to have SCO with you. We should explain who SCO is.
Oh, Stephen K. Odo, otherwise known as SCO, the former owner of my old comic shop and a character, if if ever there was one. Uh, this whole fixer thing, because there's someone who's in my comic shop country, and he had said to me, he's like, you should start up a business where you offer your consulting services to shops. Since I've been to so many, on the one hand, I I don't know that I would be quite that qualified. I mean, I've seen a lot of shops and I've spoken to a lot of retailers. I think I've gained a lot of knowledge and insight. And having worked at a shop, I mean, I've seen the inner workings, and I feel like I could be of some assistance to some shops. At the same time, and this is what I said to him when he brought this up, it's like I know enough comics retailers that I feel fairly confident. I don't know how well they would receive that sort of business pitch. Like, hey, do you want me to tell you everything you're doing wrong with your store? I don't see that flying. So,
Mm.
if for a variety of reasons, but especially that's not something I would necessarily do. Now, he was proposing that more as a like a business for myself.
Mm.
I think what you're pointing to is more, if I, brought a camera with me and did this more as a show,
Oh, yeah.
or a podcast or something. I feel like I've kind of said what I need to say on the comic shop retail front. I don't know that's really the path for me at this point.
My idea is I didn't care whether it went well or went poorly as long as it was a good show. So if they get really angry and want to toss you out, well, that's great. Great for
Yeah,
ratings, which aren't really a thing anymore. Great for views. So yeah, I could see that going really well. But being really serious, I think the one chap who's really got his finger on where comic books are at the moment, and you'll tell me his name, is the guy who sounds exactly like Bob from Bob's Burgers and buys the thousands of comics and puts them in a warehouse and then deals them out appropriately. What's his name? Tell me now.
that's Ben Lichtenstein from
That's
Zap
it. I
Comics.
can't remember that name. It's so it's unique.
Yeah, they have their business seems to be very robust, and kind of an outlier in comics retail. I mean, there are plenty of shops, and and in the movie, we definitely represent a cross section of them, and in a number of cases, and I think this is probably the most common, it's something that someone's doing on the side. A spouse works, maybe there's some family money. They're not necessarily living off of what they do from the comic shop. It's more of a passion project. They do it for the love. Um, and with Ben and some of the other shops in the movie, the love is there, but they seem to have again figured out a business model that is viable. And for them, it really is. They do all the new releases and they do merchandise, and they have a wide cross section of product, but the back issues.
Yeah.
That's really, I think, the bread and butter for them, and it's a fascinating market and surprisingly robust and hot, and continues to be. So yeah, that was really, really interesting to learn about.
So
For sure.
yeah, I love that guy in an appropriate way. And I got to talk to him, Desi, one day, haven't I? I think we would have a fun time chatting.
I'm sure you would.
Now, I got a little cough in there and I did not want to edit this video. So, but I get it's not that much of a cough. Now, Ben must have in his warehouses so many different Blue Beetle reboots. What do you think? But when you look at it, if he's got that for 10, 15 cents, right? And he gets 50 cents for it, or he gets a buck. Buck is probably being wildly enthusiastic. But say he gets 50, 75 cents. Hey, you got to love that markup, right? So just rinse and repeat.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, and I did not to plug, but I did a four episode miniseries with him a couple of years ago on my comic shop history. It's called Buying Books with Ben. I mean, for anyone who, because we spent a decent amount of time with him in the movie, but for anyone who like really wants a deep dive, the episodes are there, and it was really interesting to hear from him and how this all works. And I mean, he aggressively, not in a negative way, but he aggressively buys collections. He seeks out collections. If you go on their website, it says we buy comics, contact Ben. He puts his cell phone number up there. He drives like not to the other side of the country, but I mean, he does some pretty epic road trips to go pick up, or just to look through collections, and then he might buy them and bring them back in a van. And just the way they're set up, I mean, obviously they'll pull out the best books in a collection, and they might get those graded, or they might just price them and put them out. And those are really the big books. And then they have channels for pretty much anything else in the collection. And I mean, I don't know if I really had to think about it. I feel like that's sort of the secret sauce, or the recipe for success for them is that, it's not just they pull out the great stuff and they put that up on the wall and the rest of it just kind of sits. They have channels for moving it. They do their own convention. They have the shops. They do mail order. So it just seems like he can kind of do something with every piece of the collection he buys. And I think that I really think that's a key piece of the Zap puzzle.
Yeah, really interesting. Like, it wouldn't work in a country like Australia because there's too few people, the distances are too far. And I could do the first bit. I could hire out a huge shed and then fill it full of comics, but then I wouldn't have the second bit of how to get rid of all the lame 90s and early 2000s stuff. I wouldn't have that. But I guess eBay cures all ills, doesn't it? Because you can chuck anything up there for any price, and someone will normally eventually buy it if the price is right.
Everything eventually sells. Now you're sounding like SCO.
Look, man, SCO, we agree totally on that. Where SCO and I are going to disagree is on the pricing. Yeah. But anyway, look, he will go to his grave arguing that those storage sheds worked, and he does not want to see figures otherwise.
Yeah. So again, Zap, they have their warehouse, but again, I get the sense that there's a lot more turnover there. Steve, when alternate realities closed, I mean, he took everything that was left at the shop, and he's been storing it in initially three, now two storage units, and he sells on eBay. And he sold a lot. And he actually recently, so I'm actually going to be talking to him about this on an upcoming episode of my comic shop history, which I'm excited to record, because a few months ago he sold all the comics.
Yeah.
I believe it was to a comic shop that was opening upstate New York, something like that. I don't even know all the details yet. But that was huge. But other than that, yeah, he's been selling it piecemeal on eBay. And yes, in terms of the pricing, he has I think he's always mindful of what he paid for it and what the original suggested retail price was. And I think, that's sort of his guiding light. Not that he's completely rigid and inflexible, but that's always his starting point. And even back when we had the store, that was always the thing. We were trying to get him to blow stuff out and things, and he was always very opposed to that. But it's his stuff. And but yeah, so you talk about someone on eBay. There you go.
Well, look, I think he's been very good with his figures and statues and stuff like that, because I follow him on eBay, so I get little notifications. Sometimes look at it, and like a statue went, goes up for 150 or $300, and you think, well, that's the weekly expenses more or less paid for a SCO, for your average SCO. And I think, well, great, maybe he's right, I'm wrong. But when you just look at gross figures, you got to look at the net. But anyway, look, we're getting totally boring here. But look, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be a Desi and Dan chat if we didn't deep dive.
That's right. Yeah, it's what we do.
That's absolutely what we do. So let's talk about your local comic book scene and just the people you've talked to. Are they bouncing back? Are collectors collecting? Do you think the stores that you're in reasonably close proximity to are going to be okay?
I I I think and hope so. I mean, closest to me, with alternate realities long gone, closest to me are All Yeah Comics in Harrison, New York. And I speak to the owner there fairly regularly. I mean, to be honest, that's not so much like, "Hey, how's the business doing?" It's, more,
Mm,
how are you doing?"
mm,
And then there's also the Spider's Web in Yonkers, New York, and Undiscovered Realm in White Plains, New York, although that is not a comic shop per se. That's the store that specializes in gaming and Funko Pops.
mm,
And then I am in regular contact with the owner there. And you know, and this is not just those three stores. I mean, I think you see this, and I know there were stores that closed during the pandemic, and that's a shame. But the thing that was so encouraging to me was just seeing how stores pivoted and were able to adapt and implement new things. I think it was alternate, a similarly named store to my own old one, Alternate Reality Comics in Las Vegas. If I'm not mistaken, they did not have, a web store
mm,
before. I think they had a website with basic information, but they weren't selling through it, and they got that up and running,
mm,
over the course of this. You see a lot of stores, started doing, Instagram live sales, doing mail order where they didn't before, or increasing it. So, there were all these things that you saw stores doing, and it was, uh, again, I don't know that comics retailers are often are often quick to be that flexible, but they
no,
did. They were really
no.
great, and so I found that, very encouraging. Certainly the stores that I'm in touch with, they're still there, and I follow them on social media, and again, I speak to some of them, and I mentioned, Sean with Fat Moose, where he's actually cited, an influx of new customers. So I think there's some good stuff going on, and hopefully now that we're coming out of this pandemic or getting to that point, you will have that pent up desire to buy stuff, to look at stuff, to go to new places, and yeah, I certainly hope that for the shops.
We're finding around here, I don't have a comic book shop, but um, people are certainly wanting to get out. And I suppose it really makes sense, but I just didn't, gigs like musical gigs and happenings just seem to be popping up and more every day. And I thought, wow, some people really need to get out of the house, and I am not one of them. But but yeah, it was fantastic to see people, returning to normal. If we could not do some of the destroying of the planet, because the planet really liked this little bit of time off. But anyway, look, maybe we'll get back to that. We're all a lot more thoughtful. Do you think? I think
I
we are.
hope, I
Yeah.
hope so. But no, I know, and it's, for myself and my family, I mean, we've really been hunkered down during all of
Mm,
this. We've been
yeah.
working from home, and, we take walks and we pick up Starbucks, but I mean, we really we've not been in stores. I mean, we really haven't. So, I mean, again, to an extent, I do get, people wanting to get back out there. I think maybe we are a little bit more, you and I are kind of aligned in,
Yeah.
in how we're approaching it. But yeah, I mean, again, at least from the little bit that I've heard from, from some of the places, I mean, I think you're seeing that. And, the other thing too, that we haven't mentioned that is an important component here is, when you are talking about comic book fans, there is that, well, we could use the word addiction if we wanted to put a negative spin on it, but the passion, the
Yeah.
passion, for comics, and especially people who, have a weekly pull list at their local comic shop, and they have books pulled for them. I mean, as a comic book fan, it's like you want to get your books. And so, and I think that's probably the one thing that, if there was one thing that helped stores stay afloat over the past year, I have to imagine it was that. I mean, if you have, that dedicated core base, there, even maybe, okay, maybe you're not getting the family passing by and coming inside and buying a pop, right? Because everyone's,
Mm,
staying home. But if you still have those Wednesday regulars, the Wednesday warriors who want their books, even if they're just, like literally running in and grabbing them and leaving, and maybe you don't have the the conversation in the shop that you would normally have, but at least you have the business. So I think that is a big piece of it, and that yeah, no, I would not want to overlook that, because I think that's really key.
Yes, it's the community that's the big thing with hobbies and interests and stuff like that. You get out a lot more than what you put in. Well, not money-wise. Generally, you put in a lot more than what you get out. But it enriches the life. And, retail-wise, I've just been thinking, like, isn't really the future for comic book shops? It's the 1, 2, 3. It's the one, have a space that you could have a cafe or diner in, put some comics in it, and also have a space for gaming. Hey, haven't I just fixed everything? Would Lord Retail agree with me?
I think Lord Retail would give you a very thoughtful, measured response. I think Lord Retail and other shop owners would probably point out the added challenges of folding another type of business, especially one involving food and drink, which is a whole other arena, into a comic shop. But I mean, it exists. I mean, one of the shops in the movie is Amalgam Comics and Coffee House, and they do exactly what you described. So I think stuff like that does make sense, and especially when we do keep coming back to this idea, right, of community, of the space, of having that place to go, and the value of comic shops in being able to make personalized recommendations. Yeah, I think to whatever extent, I guess stores can create an environment that further cultivates that sense of community and the interactions. I think that's valuable. Now, whether that cultivation comes in the form of a coffee table area or something else, yeah, that I don't know, but yeah, really that space is such an important piece.
What about this for my second retail idea? Because I know you got a good business head. Just a space, fill it with long boxes full of comics of just all sorts of stuff, and so you can go in and you can buy like a super lame run of something like a Blue Beetle reboot, but you can get the whole 25 of them or something like that. So you can see them and you can say, oh, look, this art's pretty good and it's sort of interesting. And, people just go in and lay waste, just like go for it. It's got good stuff, but not so much good stuff, but more like, a lot of 50 cents, a lot of dollars, a lot of $2.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because going back to Zap Comics and Ben, one thing that they do, and they're not the only shop that does this. You see this a good bit at conventions here as well, but what they have at their shop, they do have sets. They have exactly what you're describing. And I love that. I mean, I remember one of the times I was there recording, I picked up a set of John Byrne's Man of Steel miniseries, all 6 issues. And it's, I don't know, you might get other fans who argue, well, that defeats the purpose of, hunting for back issues. But I think that it's a, because again, with a lot of these things, of course, you can get a collected edition, a graphic novel containing the single issues. But for people who want the single issues, but don't necessarily want to have to piece them together, it's so convenient. And I have to say, with Zap, they're pretty reasonably priced. And again, you have the convenience of having, an entire miniseries or story arc or series or creator run, all wrapped up in that treasury-sized comic book bag. There's something to that.
Yeah, I know they do it all the time on eBay. Like you'll see, 1 to 4 Cloak and Dagger, blah blah blah. But you can't really have a look through. And I'm thinking about trying to keep this industry going, and I think it's going to have to be more visual, more touchy feely, because I think that's the way people younger than you and I are. You're a lot younger than I already, but let's just say young people in quotation marks.
I got to tell you though, I mean, not to disagree, but
oh yeah, feel free to disagree.
As far as young, I mean, I think again, I love the sets, and I think for plenty of comics fans that there's a lot of appeal in that. For younger people, I don't know that being able to dig through back issue bins or being able to get a set of comics, I don't know how much of a driver that would necessarily be. I mean, maybe. I mean, I think in terms of, again, and this is, I don't have any answers here. I know this is like the big question, how do you pull in new people? But the thing I always go back to is that I feel like digital comics might be the bridge, not the
Mm,
destination, but the bridge. Because I feel like if you can tap into this massive worldwide audience of people watching the movies and the television shows, and I don't know, somehow get them, to take a look at a digital comic and leave, at the end of the issue, it's like, for more, visit your local comic shop. Because I think that's the thing. I feel like digital comics, there's a lot of potential there, because that's how people are so used to consuming content now,
mm,
regardless of what it is. You're on your iPad, you're scrolling through Netflix. Similarly, you scroll through Comixology or DC Universe Infinite or Marvel Unlimited.
mm,
So I feel like it's very natural. But at the same time, if you don't have, I mean, even if you've seen the movies, you have some sort of context for the characters, but at the same time, you're not well versed in the comic book world. And as you and I well know, as comic fans, these characters have been around for decades, multiple series. You want to talk about your Blue Beetle reboots? It's like, you wouldn't, it was like, where would you start? I mean, yes, you can go to Wikipedia and you can start to piece it together, but are you necessarily going to do all that homework? What you really need is the Lord Retails,
yeah.
right? Who you can say like, hey, I really like this character. I watched this movie and it was really interesting. Where do I go next? And they can point you there. But I do kind of tend to think that I feel like it might be a little bit too much of a leap to say, okay, they're going to go watch the movie and then run to a comic shop. But maybe if there's something from the movie that can point them to a digital comic so they can say, like, oh, I can experience the character like this. It's really cool, but I need some direction where to go next. And then the shops are there. I feel like that's the bridge.
Maybe we're just on the cusp of something, and I can see a time where paper becomes so expensive to produce that comics turn into real art. But I think it's quite a few years away. But I think this interim period between what you're saying, between what I'm saying, between what other people are tabling, it's just going to go on for an annoyingly long period of time. Because I mean, I don't see comic book characters going away. I just think there's so much there. There's, when something continues to do billions and billions and billions of business, there's something there, right? There's not nothing there. And they've really tapped into something, 120 odd years ago, and it's going to go on for a long, long time. I think it's not going to go away. It's just going to be different.
I mean, I agree 100%. The delivery mechanism might change, but yeah, I definitely don't see the characters going anywhere. This sort of points to a question that I've explored on the podcast and in the documentary a little bit too, because in My Comic Shop Country, you have Oh Yeah Comics, the owner there. Like
Mm,
he sets up a table at the local movie theater when there are
mm,
superhero movies, and he sells pops and related graphic novels and things like that. And it's a way to kind of grab someone and be like, hey, you liked Avengers Endgame?
yeah.
Well, here you go. But the thing that I always come back to is, I mean, it's great that he does that, and maybe he'll pick up a few more customers for his shop, and
Mm,
that's great. But I think if you're going to have like a true shift, like truly an influx, a wave of new comics readers, I think that these efforts need to come from higher in the food chain. I mean, I think what the retailers can do at the ground level is great, but I always come back to, if there were, something at the end of the movie, if instead of a post-credit scene, which I love and they're fun, but what if once instead of that, it was the actors in the movie as themselves, encouraging people to go to their local comic shop and to, something like that. But again, that comes from, a whole other level. And I don't know how much of a priority that would be for them, because I think that the comic book sales, I mean, it's such a tiny, it's such
it
a
is. It's a
small piece of the
fraction.
pie for them, so I don't know how likely that is, but I think that's where something would need to happen from that higher level in order to like really reach people and maybe get some action.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Look, we've talked a lot, Desi. I'm going to have to let you go. We'll catch up again, but we won't let it be years. Where's the best couple of places to get all your Desi news and content?
I mean, if you're looking for one place, the
Yeah.
flatsquirrelproductions.com, everything is there. There are links to everything. But all of my podcasts, my comic shop history, Digging for Kryptonite, my comic shop book club, they're wherever you get podcasts. They're on every major podcast platform. And then video editions of those shows, as well as that comic shop team up YouTube series. You can get all of that at the Anthony Desiato YouTube channel. So, but again, if one stop shopping, go to flatsquirrelproductions.com and there's links to everything there.
Okay. Well, hesitation kills.
It does. That's why don't be a flat squirrel. But really, Dan, thank you so much. It was great to see you and catch up, and always happy to talk comics and comic shops and retail.
Boy,
And
didn't we what?
you know
I thought we were going to talk more about real stuff, but then we didn't. It doesn't matter. It
that
was a fun time.
well, look, I mean, I talk about this stuff a lot, but I know you have a keen interest in this, so I'm always
I
happy to chat.
do. Yes, it's been a through line through my life, through line through. I guess through lines will go through your life for a long time. Anyway, we'll talk again soon, and it'll be just as much fun. Thanks.
Yes.